I'm going to react to a Dr. Phil video where kids cannot read.
I think a lot more grace needs to be given to teachers. I think right now the things that teachers are being expected to do rather than focusing on students' academic needs are just checking boxes and being little robots and being an assembly line. They're not able to be fully present. We just feel like by Friday, don't look at me, don't talk to me, don't touch me, don't need me. You know, the thing that I feel most compelled to share is that if things don't change, we will have no teachers.
All right, that is very true. I did an I Quit Teaching video, and the I Quit Teaching videos are so popular. So many teachers are quitting, and I kept saying when there are no teachers left, people will finally listen, and I think that's starting to happen. Next slide.
The pandemic proved to be one of the biggest disasters ever for students, particularly those in public schools. Mark and Val's children were no exception, but instead of hindering their learning, it actually led to shocking but eye-opening truths and led to a new life for all of them.
When my son was in school, he was struggling, and towards the end of the pandemic, we were seeing that he was not doing well at all, and he was falling behind.
The pandemic happened, and they basically sent all the kids home with tablets. And in essence, we were basically homeschooling the kids ourselves. So you're sitting there watching what these teachers are doing, and the kids don't actually learn anything. Our daughter was not being challenged. Our son was way behind, and nobody seemed to be figuring out what to do.
The school system definitely wants a one-size-fits-all for all kids, and that's not how, every child is learning at their own pace. When we had to homeschool our kids, at first it was temporary, and then we thought, oh man, this is so awesome. We are seeing our kids thrive, and we are loving it. We're able to travel around America and see all these national monuments, go to museums, and it was just something that sparked our interest that we don't want to give this up, and we want to continue doing this.
You got some shocks in this situation. Nobody told you, for example, that your son was not reading to his grade level, right?
Correct.
How'd the light bulbs start coming on?
I would say during the pandemic, we really started to see what was happening. And our son was falling really behind. He wasn't reading, he wasn't writing well. And so that was truly eye-opening. We were sent home with tablets. As parents, we had to sit there and basically teach our kids ourselves. And we saw the downfalls of where our son was.
And what grade?
At that particular time?
Second grade.
And you say he was behind in math and reading both, right?
Yes. We knew he was a special kid, so
he can't learn from memorization. He can't sit behind a book, sit behind a screen. He's very, very hands-on, and that's what it seemed like he was never getting. And we only found out about that later on.
Oh, first of all, yes, teachers and the school system and educators definitely need to hone their techniques, but I have some questions. So first of all, how come these parents did not know their kids' reading levels until the pandemic in second grade? So that means you weren't reading with your kid. Because yes, the school system needs to do stuff, and the school system should have told them. Definitely when my daughter started to fall behind, I was told. But then how did you not know? Why were you not reading with your kid? Why were you not looking at the homework papers and the tests and the quizzes that were coming home to see what he was getting wrong and how he was doing? And I would think, unless he was still getting good grades despite not knowing, how did you not know? So I feel like parents need to take responsibility. And Kathy and I were talking about this when we, on our live stream about her grandchild with Down syndrome, but no matter what you do with your kids, whether it's homeschooling, public school, or private school, ultimately 100% it's your responsibility with your kids. Now that does mean these parents decided to homeschool, so they did ultimately do something what they felt was the best for their kid. But if your kids are in the public school, You can volunteer at the school, volunteer to go on field trips, be in close touch with the teachers, which is all the things I used to do. And then if your kid's falling behind, you say to the teacher, what can I do at home to support you in helping my child learn to read or learn math or learn these concepts falling behind? Or if for whatever reason you can't or don't, you do what you can to get a tutor. It's ultimately up to you, and parents should be reading to their kids as early as possible. So I don't think it's fair to totally blame the teacher, though yes, the strategies used in schools definitely make a big difference. But for these parents to totally blame the school system, I don't agree with that.
Did you find parents that didn't know where their kids were in terms of performance?
Absolutely. I think sometimes as teachers, we have those kids who we call bubble kiddos who aren't having gnarly behaviors in the classroom. They're not taking all of our attention. And it's sometimes hard to catch those kids because all of our attention is going to the kids who know nothing or the danger to others or themselves. So it's kids like your son who, as teachers, we feel like we're failing the most because our attention is going elsewhere.
Okay, so that is true, and I don't know how to change that because I was even talking with my TA about it. The kids that have the highest behavior problems are going to be the ones sitting by the teacher and getting the most attention, unfortunately, even if it's negative attention. And then the kids who are kind of in the middle or just behave do fall by the wayside, and it's unfortunate, but that's why you as parents do need to come along and advocate for your kid and know where your kid is academically.
First, second, and third grade, you learn to read. From there on, you read to learn. So you spend the first 3 years learning, getting this tool, and then from there on, you use that tool to learn. So if you don't get it in those first 3 years, then you don't have that tool to gather knowledge with from that point on. And so you just start falling further behind and getting frustrated. And that's when they start acting out. That's why 85% of kids in the court system, in the juvenile centers, are barely literate.
Okay, so that's true. So by the time they're in fourth grade, and the school system won't, like if you have a kid that's a year behind, 2 years behind, they still want you to teach on grade level. What they would like you to do is get that kid up to speed grade level and then teach also that content, which, you know, even if you see improvement, that should say something. You can't work miracles. You can improve, but trying to get the kid up to speed and on grade level when they're already behind is tough. Casey says, as a teacher, it is our job to know where all our kiddos are at regardless of the other kids. Definitely it is. But I still am telling parents that might not happen. It's still ultimately your responsibility because honestly, that kid's going to move on to the next grade. That teacher's going to have a whole new set of students, and that kid is still your kid. So you need to be the best advocate. And if you see that your kid is behind, but the teacher hasn't said anything, it's your job to go to the teacher and said, I think my kid's behind. What do you see in class? What can we do to help this? So definitely that is the teacher's job for sure. But still, ultimately, we're a teacher. You're the child's parent. And also, that clip was talking about behaviors, and I've talked about this in other videos. Us teachers need your support at home when kids are having behaviors, because what we get this day and age is parents making excuses for their kids, not wanting you to punish them. You should be coming alongside the teacher to help with behaviors. Back in the day, you know, if a parent got a call from a teacher that the child was misbehaving, then the child got punished at home. And that's the type of support teachers need so that you're helping us with the behavior problems and then we can then teach. So I talked a lot about that in my Why I Quit Teaching Middle School video.
I would get in my car and I was just glad everybody went home safe. like it just shifted from genuinely teaching the students academics to feeling like you're putting out fires all day long, whether it's redirecting a behavior, whether it's a parent email that has absolutely nothing to do with academics. They're asking you unrealistic expectations.
Okay, so that's true. So basically, teachers are putting out fires when it comes to behavior. But if you want to know what she's talking about as far as parent requests, Board Teachers has done a whole series about something like crazy parent requests, I think it's called, or something like that. And it's like absolutely ridiculous things they ask of the teacher that has nothing to do with the classroom or, beyond the teacher's job description.
Instead, we're actually going to these places. We try to cover the basics, math, reading, writing. Those are the things that we definitely want to make sure that they're challenged completely on. But when it comes to social studies, history, science, we travel to destinations. For almost 4 years now, we go to wherever we're supposed to read about. And internationally, we're going to really like hot button areas where you had in Hawaii, where you had Pearl Harbor, you had Japan, you had where the South Korean War happened. We're going to these different areas to actually explore and learn about them.
Do you have any idea what that's costing a year?
Probably an arm and a leg.
It's worth it, though.
It's worth it.
Completely worth it.
Yeah, but not everybody can do that.
Correct.
That's what makes it hard. Okay.
All right, so that sounds like an amazing homeschool experience. I would love to be a kid in their household and getting to travel all those places and learn. But like Dr. Phil said, that is not the reality for most people. Most people who homeschool, obviously they're on one income because, well, most of them. I have heard of some people working in homeschooling. Usually they use a program, but it's usually a stay-at-home mom. Not everybody can afford that, but that would be amazing if you could.
Districts have tried to get more students to graduate despite not increasing the number of students who are actually doing the work that it takes to learn. Like, you get credit for not turning in your assignments. You pass even if you don't show up to school, all in the name of getting a graduation rate up without really changing anything. Something is up if chronically truant students are graduating. I find it frustrating that policies make it difficult for students to fail even when they don't engage with the material. When schools fudge graduation requirements, when they pass and graduate students who haven't been showing up at the expense of everyone who's earning a diploma, they are now suspect. They are now no longer believed when they present that diploma and say, I have the skills to do this job. And employers reasonably are skeptical that the diploma means anything because the school has systematically devalued it by issuing diplomas to students who weren't even there.
How is this happening?
I think it starts with accountability, that schools understandably are held accountable for certain outcomes. They're held accountable for student attendance, which they don't completely control. They're held accountable for test scores, which they have a bigger influence on, and they're held accountable for graduation rates. And I think that's where some of the fudging starts.
Okay, so having a kid in school and graduation rates, not what they actually learn. Okay, that's a problem. We're incentivizing the wrong outcome criteria, right?
Absolutely.
Somebody can be there, just check in the morning and go hang out in the hall, not necessarily learn anything, not do anything. But this clearly is not working. And you say grading and graduation rate pressures people to lower the standards so they can keep the numbers up to get their funding.
Absolutely.
We're paying for the wrong things.
Right. We want schools to achieve the outcome of getting all students to read. We want that student to graduate, but we don't want them to graduate without being able to read.
But 19% of graduates can't read. How do you graduate and you can't read?
It's a scandal. It's not acceptable. I think it happens early on. The gaps begin early in kindergarten, in first grade. And because learning builds never close. Kids don't get the support they need, teachers don't get the support they need, and the job of catching students up becomes greater and greater with every passing year.
So I think the whole idea when they were incentivizing people for graduation is that then schools would do what they need to do to educate and get students to graduate. But it sounds like they're just cheating instead and saying, okay, we'll give you a 50 instead of a 0 so you can pass. And I did deal with this. I saw this in the middle school. You were never ever allowed to give a 0, even if the kid did 0 work. Some teachers would try to somehow get the kid to do 50% of the work, but that also takes a lot of time off the teacher. So we're finding, schools are just cheating instead. Okay, you want me to graduate more students, I will. And it doesn't mean the students are doing any better.
U.S. results versus these developed countries. And we're down at number 36 in literacy. But yet we spend more money than these other countries. We supposedly have all this technology, but yet we're 36th in the world in terms of literacy. How is that possible? We're 7th out of 37 in science. We're 25th in mathematics. Computer information, we're 5th out of 14. We're way down the list.
We are. And here's the thing. We know how to teach all children to read. This is not some mystery. This was figured out a long time ago.
Do we?
We absolutely do. And we've seen new legislation around the science of reading to make sure that all schools are using evidence-based practices so that students don't slip through the cracks. But I think what a lot of it comes down to, Dr. Phil, is support. Teachers are being asked to do this all on their own. So if you have 20 students who are below grade level, you're expected to catch them up on your own. And there is just not time in the day. Teachers need help.
They would hand me a spiral-bound book and they would walk out of my classroom and then expect me to teach it the next day. I can't read from a book and engage a 6-year-old. I have to have fun with it, right? They just expect teachers to do it all. It's like running this rat race of trying to figure it out.
So the science of reading is phonics, basically. That's the new name that they're calling it. So they got rid of phonics and then realized that was a mistake, and now they're going back to it. But yes, she's right. If you have 30 students in a class and 20 are below grade level, you can't expect the teacher to work miracles. So definitely, if you want to catch them up, you need more support. And as a parent, if you think your child might have a learning disability, at any time you can ask that your child be tested for a disability, and then your child will get more services in school. I'm now a special education teacher, and that is my job, to work in smaller groups with kids so that I can help catch them up. So that is another option. And if you're unsure, just ask for the kid to be tested. They might get tested and say, no, they don't have a disability, or they might. And then you're going to get help in the school that you need. And if it's in the public school, it's free, as opposed to you paying for tutors, which not everybody can afford.
You start with a 50, right? The lowest grade a kid can get is a 50, and a 50 is passing in a lot of these states. When y'all were in school, wasn't the lowest grade a 0?
0.
I know, because I had a lot of zeros.
I think we're lowering the standards on everything, right? Like academics, of course, but we don't even have standards for behaviors. Listen to the teacher, what does that even mean? We're truly not even able to teach anymore. We're just putting out fires.
Well, and you can't suspend a student, because if they go home that day, you don't have that head count and it affects your funding. So if you suspend 10 students because they got in fights or they attacked a teacher, well, then that's 10 students they don't get funding for. So these hellions stay in school, and it disrupts the others who might be trying to learn.
That is true. First of all, I already talked about the 50% grades. And then suspension was a tough thing. I talk about this in my Why I Quit Teaching Middle School video as well. One thing, when I would do after school detention, you had to get the parents' permission because someone had to pick them up. And many times the parents would just flat out say no. So there's, again, we need parent support to help this whole thing keep moving. 50, Nifty, and beyond. Kathy says, my students in Asia are allowed very limited screen time, and their homes are bursting with books. Their parents are also super involved in their education. Those are good examples we should follow. Yes. And we all know from teaching in China, sometimes even too much. Sometimes they'd be sitting right there by the kids, like giving them the answer. And you're like, no, I want to teach them. Let them figure it out. Let them I want them to answer. So yeah, they went too far the other way, but I'd rather have that than an uninvolved parent for sure. Yeah, so true, so true. They limit their own kids' screen times, and yeah, I am in disagreement with the government limiting the screen time, but you as a parent should limit the screen time. So let me know what you guys think of this. I told you my opinion, but it's scary where things are going in the schools. But thanks for being here live, Kathy and Casey. And if you're watching later, let me know what you think about all of this. Bye, everyone. See you next time.